Okay, welcome everyone to the Artisan History session. I'm joined with a couple of awesome OG folks here. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. They can start with their keycap names, when they joined a little, and a little bit about kind of their entree into the hobby.
My name's Anson. I go by CPTBadAss on keycap forum. I joined, I think, December 2012. This is my essentially second time back in the hobby, and my 401k isn't as good as it used to be, but that's why we have these guys here.
December 2012, that's amazing.
I'm Joey Quinn on keycap. I believe I made the account mid-May of 2014, so closing in on 10 years.
Amazing. Okay, so what we're going to do today,
Well, you can introduce yourself.
Oh, you guys, if you don't know me, I'm Rmendis. I started long after them, late 2016. Fell down the rabbit hole and have been trying to, collect as much vintage keycaps as I can, like these guys. And happy to share this with you. I'm going to swap back and forth here between the camera and what we're going to do is we're going to go through as much of the history as we can in this 1 hour session. CPT is going to give an overview of the KeyCons as well that have happened in the past, because this is one of the first KeyCons we've had in 5 years, and for many of you it's your first, so we thought it'd be nice to go back in time and see what those previous KeyCons were like. So from an artisan perspective, these did not exist, these little things, until somebody named Clack Factory on Geekhack or ClickClack came and he posted, and you can go to my site, the Artisan Collector site, and drill down and get into the Geekhack posts and things like that. But he talked about his efforts to make custom keycaps, and he did a post where he gave away, I think it was a single shot red clack or something like that. Yeah. I have never seen one. I don't know if you guys have. Those were lost in time. But we do have a few clacks here that he launched in, I think, May 2010 is kind of roughly when we think.
So I would say 2010, but the dark sides you see up there, all the invoice dates I've seen on those are November 2009.
Okay, so late November 2009.
I believe it was a dib sale or something similar, but yeah, so that happened at the end of 2009.
Yep.
That would have been pre-warm as well.
So do you want to talk a little bit about these, JQ? What are we seeing here?
Oh, yeah, so up on the screen now are some of, I don't know how old your OG try is. I believe mine's one of the older ones, so I think it should be from 2010.
Did he do multiple batches?
Well, over time the skull got cleaned up, so the way, where the skull meshes with the top of the cap and the infill on the front, so whether or not you can tell there's a curvature on the top of the cap, so over time Clack did change the skulls a bit, so there have been multiple versions. An OG try has been made multiple times. So there's a bit of a range there. But the dark sides, I believe, were only made once. But anyways, those would be from late 2009, and then the OG tries would have been, that public sale would have been December of 2010.
So these are some of the oldest keycaps in...
Yeah, the oldest publicly sold keycaps, at least as far as I'm aware. I don't think anything occurred before then. And there were some other people experimenting pretty soon after, but yeah, Clack definitely led the charge with not only making keycaps, but then selling them to people and seeing success with it. The dark sides were $45 originally. The OG tries followed up and they were cheaper. I think they were, wasn't it 19? 19 when they were on EK, but the first sale might have been even cheaper. But
I have an invoice of one of my old ones, and it was literally $20.
Yeah. Wow.
So
And
how much they go for now? I'm not gonna
$25.
I'm not gonna quote any prices on OG tries. But if you want any of my caps, $15,000, I'll sell you absolutely anything. So reach out.
And
Just for a little more filler too, there is something called rootworm where keycap was used to be hosted on a server, and it's the bottom of the server rack. It got broken or something, and the owner had to essentially reboot the server. So it is possible that there were artisans before then, but we don't know because there's no records of the server before then.
Interesting. And Clack is also known for being one of the first makers to try many different techniques, one of which was encapsulation. And it's a little hard to see here, but this is something he made called a keycapacitor. And he took tritium vials and he encapsulated this within a cap, for the Back to the Future kind of thing. But do you want to talk a little about that, Joey? Like any other kind of firsts that you think Clack was the first to do? I think there was many, but.
I mean, if you want to know, like, the short of it with knowing more on Clack is he actually posted a lot about what he did. Some of it's pretty cryptic and weird, but if you read it enough times, you can start to figure out what he was going for. But his FAQ thread and a few other threads, like he posted a list of materials he's experimented with making caps in, and it's 4 or 5 dozen like materials long. He made edible caps. He talked about trying to cast keycaps out of ice. So like he was really just kind of screwing around, and like he had the background knowledge to be able to do it, but he was also a passionate keycap collector. Like back then, Clack still had a massive collection. I would assume he still does. I'm not really sure, but like
of
he was
keyboards
a passionate
too.
collector of keyboards, and then had the know-how to design keycaps and a production process to make them, and then the artistic skill and passion to see it through. And I don't know, he really was the perfect storm of somebody to hit the public sale with keycaps.
So
just to add on to that, the stuff on the top is not Clack, but Clack was an early person who did.
Here, I've got a buckling spring skull right there.
Yes. So he did have, as you can see, early caps where it wasn't just MX as you see now. There are lots of STEM diversity, which you see a lot less of now. He even experimented with stuff where you can see that it would like stick this in this, and it would become a cap, and then he had something called BMX where you could swap it out for MX or PS.
With the skulls though, remove the stems at your own risk. Some of them are glued better than others. You can kind of see on camera maybe, I don't know. But
it's scratches.
yeah, he scratched inside of it and then used like an epoxy glue. So like it doesn't really chemically bond, but it'll mechanically hold. But if they're really glued well, you'll probably break the skull. So like, be careful if you try to. It's pretty fun too because you can make BMX inserts, but like, yeah, be careful.
So after Clack, who kicked this whole thing off, there were lots of experiments, I feel like, from different makers, and one of the first that we saw him post
Quickly though, Ishtab, if you're watching this, you ghosted me on selling me some of those Zerglings. Please reply. I do still want to buy them.
We had a deal.
Almost, I guess.
Oh, by the way, I do want to mention, so there were a lot of folks making novelty caps. I want to distinguish novelty from artisans a little bit, but, novelty caps, either with, GMK logos or Cherry logos or other things like that. But then you had folks like Boost come along, and this was, I think, one of the earliest makers after Clack to do something sculpted. You want to talk about
At least
this,
to
Joe?
post about it. We've got, here, we can get them.
Yep.
Get them on.
Yeah, I'll move these out.
So I'll say the thing that I really love about Boost is, so like Clack had some background knowledge in how to make things. Boost really seems like somebody who had a vague idea how to make things, but took a lot of his inspiration from how keycap production was already done. So if you look at Signature Plastics caps and GMK caps, the sprues are on the back, like they're on the top surface of the cap right here. And so instead of putting sprues on the bottom, like Clack did and a lot of people do today, Boost would put a huge sprue right at the top of the cap, and then after he was done casting them, he would cut off the sprue and then post like demolding, refinish the entire cap, like sand it down, polish it, whatever. As far as I'm aware, every single, at least one of the superheroes, his later caps, I'm not sure because I didn't see production pictures of like the skull and some of the one-off stuff, but at least with the superheroes, as far as I'm aware, they were all done with that huge sprue at the top, and they all then required post-production after, which also means that like, quality-wise, if you really like pick at the resin and like feel it, they're pretty soft. Like they're not as solid as most caps are today. Like he really was feeling out the process, but I just love that he didn't really know how to make caps, but you could see how GMK and SP were doing it. So why not follow their lead?
And after Boost, let's see, we had a Korean maker, Girl DC. I don't have any of these, but
I really want a Whale Bro or a Ghost, but they were.
Oh, you do? Okay. Chris has some. He's going to go grab some.
They're hot cast metal caps though.
Right.
So they're like, I don't know much about the production. I don't know if they were doing it at home or if they had access to like larger scale manufacturing, but they were hot cast metal caps.
Gas mask. So this, okay, Hotkeys project. This is a maker that's actually still around. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but it's one of the earliest makers and one of the longest active makers.
One of the earliest makers, and as far as I'm aware, with gas mask caps early on, so a lot of these sales, the gas mask went through several versions. I think I know of 6 or 7, I'm kind of blanking right now, but there were small variations to the respirator and the profile of the cap, and then the later ones were made in both MX and Topra stems. This is actually the very first version of it, is the only one on a cherry profile base. All the other MX ones are on OEM, and the Topra ones are a pretty close match to actual Topra profile. But with him too, though, the early sales, a lot of them were hosted on, announced and hosted on Facebook. So a lot of the posts, they're all on, I think, Vietnamese. But anyways, so they gone through Facebook, and then I think the leftovers were possibly going through keycap. But with a lot of these sales, from the pictures, there's not full batch shots. But if you take the picture, even from the caps you can see in it, he was possibly doing 4 to 6 dozen per colorway, and seemingly like selling out. So early on, Martin was hosting huge sales and having success to it. As far as I'm aware, at Clack back then, like there were some larger sales, but they weren't. Every sale wasn't at that volume, and it seemed like with Martin, every single one was. It'd be cool to interview him and see his perspective on it.
So he was the first to kind of popularize or even make large-scale sales possible 2 years after Clack, or 2 or 3 years after Clack. Yeah.
We had or I at least thought that he was cranking them at such a like a high quantity that they were just injection molded. But I don't have proof of that. That was just a theory.
Yeah, I believe later ones definitely, like Hockey's project later on, I believe definitely were, but early on it's hard to pre-name change when it originally they were Gas Mask Keycap before changing over the name to Hockey's project. I'm not sure exact production techniques, they didn't get into it much, but.
Okay. And then that was September 2012. October 2012, BroCaps launched, and the first BroCap that was made was essentially a cast of an Optimus Prime, I guess some sort of a toy bot, and these were pretty, raw casts. I think at the beginning there were some, ones that they had painted eyes. Here's a couple of them here, and you can kind of see if you look at the bottom. The stem's not bad, but I've seen some pretty rough ones. And then Bro was one of the first, I think, to do CNC. So the next version of the BroBot, this is an aluminum prototype. He actually, before 3D caught on, it was mostly an industrial technology, and he went to someone in Las Vegas, and he got them to, model and CNC this cap, which ultimately turned out to be a pretty iconic sculpt. This is a version 2.5, which has a TMX stem. I think it was one of the first TMX stems. I can't remember.
He was one of the first.
One of the first. This is a Rama. This insert was actually made by Rama, and there's a Rama logo on it.
Rama ones were.
And they delivered. Yeah, Rama and Bro combo. It's interesting. So this became a pretty iconic sculpt. And of course, I didn't bring other. Well, let me see. I have a few other BroCaps sculpts. So here's he did a lot of 3D as well as hand sculpted. So here's a V1 of something called a stump. It was a front-facing sculpt. I think it was one of the earlier front-facing sculpts. And here's a V2, which was CNC. Let's see here. Anything else? Yeah. So Bro has a big body of work.
The V2 is 3D printed.
The V2 is 3D, yep. And the V1 is hand. And he's had several like that. I think the V1 rivet was sculpted, and then the V2 was 3D printed. So big body of work, and he's still active, of course. All right. After Bro, let's see here. Come back to the timeline. So Bro was October 2012. By the way, I think the BroBot turned 10 last year, the V2, so he's doing
I don't know if it does, but does it hold the record for longest produced sculpt?
I think
like it's been going on for so long.
I think the BroBot is the longest active produced sculpt. And so yeah, he's doing an anniversary sale this year with some collaborations with some makers. After that, you see there's a whole bunch. Alessandro, this is long before my time. I don't have any of these caps, but lots of painted blanks. People playing with custom dipping.
In 2013, in 2013, everybody realized that it was really easy to paint keycaps, and at that time too, signature plastic scrap bags were way cheaper than they are now. I think it was £5, and I think they were like 30 shipped. So like they were much cheaper. And yeah, people nail polish, spray paint, like acrylic paint with designs. Like people went wild. Like everybody, we have a few on this list, but I'm sure there's dozens more people who didn't post about painting their own caps. Actually, I didn't bring any Bunny Lake ones.
I think this is a.
I have some Kidno caps. Oh yeah, that's a Bunny Lake.
That's a Bunny Lake.
Yeah, that's a Bunny Lake. Oh, so yeah, Bunny Lake sold a bit, but mostly sent caps to people. But yeah, did nail polish caps and like glitter on caps, and probably the biggest name who painted caps beyond Kidno.
I'll pass this one around. This is a Bunny Lake cap. All right. December 2012 is when consumer 3D printing kind of came into the scene, and that was some of the earlier 3D printed stuff. We started seeing it on Shapeways and things like that. But they were pretty rough, not high resolution, and so you didn't see a ton of this. I don't know if you guys ever came across them. I guess they were given away at...
We've seen them. I saw them before, but they were pretty rough. 3D printing's gotten a lot better, but back then you could see all the layers, you could see how chunky it was, so not the greatest.
Nubbinator, you guys have heard this name. This is March 2013. We've got some early stuff here. Let's put them in.
Really early.
I think Chris who gave me this? There was a duck I had here somewhere. Oh.
We got his famous zinc blank.
Oh, there we go.
It's the hot cast zinc over there.
JQ, I'll let you do the honors of talking about Nub.
Oh, okay. So yeah, Nub was one of the makers who really early on felt like he was just kind of playing around. It seemed like he was also very open about posting his experiments. So Nub would talk openly about a lot of stuff that failed, a lot of stuff that worked, post about it. So his maker threads are still a gold mine if you go back and you want to learn about making caps or the thought process of designing keycaps or anything like that. I love those threads, but he rotated through his sculpt catalog. We have some examples here and more in the boxes, but it's dozens of characters deep. Some released, some unreleased. Some of the unreleased stuff ends up being given away as gifts to people. So Nub, there's endless caps to collect. And then of course, within the last few years, he came back and did some more production and a little bit of collab work with Fractal Caps. And so you have new catalog, old catalog. A lot of the stuff that was new that came out was. A lot of the new stuff was collabs, so it was mostly just reproduction of old caps that were they will be sort of slight variations because they were molds made of old caps instead of old masters, so you might be able to figure out whose cap yours was made from. I don't know if anyone will get that deep into collecting them, but with old caps, people have looked at weird details like that, so who knows where it'll go.
I feel like he's the quintessential vintage cap. I just feel they feel very organic. You can see there's, they're not ultra refined, but they have some charm to it. And he really did experiment with a lot of colors. Yeah. And stems. He experimented with a lot of different stems too, right?
I think he was the first to talk about working on TMX, at least. Clack beat everyone to BMX. That happened super early. But TMX Nub was, I think, the first to post publicly about it. He might have been the first to release pictures of it. That I'm not totally sure. But his, right out the gate too, worked. At least the versions he released worked pretty well. He talked about designing plenty of versions that didn't work at all. But again, that's all in the threads. You go back, it's still a gold mine.
And just to point out, now there's YouTube videos, you can download Z-Buds, you can buy them off Etsy. We didn't have that. We had someone made 55 caps, all of them sucked, but someone documented them all in the thread, and you can see okay, this one kind of worked for this idea, that one kind of didn't work, so we're just going to abandon that idea. You can see makers reading each other's threads and doing the same experiments to see what
very organic, yeah.
Just to point out too how lucky we all are that a Topra stem fits inside the top of an MX housing. Like two totally separate companies, two totally different countries. There was no reason those had to be the same size. They are the same size. Like to the 10th of a millimeter, they're the same size.
Amazing.
There's no reason that should have been, and we all got lucky. So, I mean, Topra stems are complete nonsense and they suck, but they got that one detail right.
I still remember one of the earlier geekhack threads by Nub was he was using sand to make molds, right?
Yeah.
So
I
he
guess
was,
that's how we.
That's why this is so early. But this was hot cast metal over the resin base, which is why it's kind of, you see, it's super wonky and it's a little burned.
I didn't know that one. That's cool. Nice. All right, so coming back after Nub, more painted keycaps. The one I was passing around, that was a Bunny Lake one. And then Rob Binge, who will be speaking on the next panel, launched in July 2013.
Try to slide the box under.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a lot of binge in here.
I think the caps that are in that picture are right here too.
So there's a handicap.
We
Yeah.
got handicap, we got the big hand too. So that's 3 of the 4 versions of handy right there. I don't have the 4th, unfortunately.
This is the
It'll
same.
be out there somewhere.
This is the same, right?
That's the same as that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the shellac one.
Oh,
Wait, actually, let me see. Yeah, no, that's the
the one
shellac one.
The Ishtab?
This one?
Yeah.
Is that his top?
No, it's the one. So we were talking about Ishtab earlier. This is the one that Rob made for me
circling.
as a cope because I couldn't get the Ishtab and I was desperate to get one. So
He
then
has multiple. Allegedly, he has multiple. If this happens, I'll get you one. Hold me to
So
that.
he made Sypho one. Sypho didn't want to bake it because it's made out of Sculpey, so he gave it to me, and then it ended up with Rich. But yeah, it was very early. So.
We do have some interesting proto keys. Yeah, here. Let's put it in this one.
Oh, this one's from 2015. Oh yeah, we can put him in the box.
So these are some of the oldest Binge proto keys. These are painted. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the Hunger inspiration. Is that right?
Sort of. So like the Hunger. So like the Hunger line. Like Hunger is sort of the logo. So like if you remember back in the older Hungerworks Studio or Binge Cap days, where it was the escape cap that had like the blob on top of it with the teeth and the tongue coming out. So like that's his sort of logo on a lot of his old box art. When he signs his name, there's a hunger blob somewhere in the image. This blank right here is a little hunger blob. So like this is sort of a much larger sculpted version of it. There's another one too I consider this one the sort of like the V2. There's a V1 out there that was closer to his logo that he had. Yeah. He posted it. It went to somebody, not sure where it went, so it's only been photographed once back in 2013. Would love to find that one, but yeah, you can then see how that transitions to the Hunger that you'd be much more familiar with, and then the V2 that's currently out.
Here's the V2. So there's V1 here. There's a V1. I guess a V. Or
Yeah, and then you see like I wish I brought some package art because we could show
Yeah.
the drawn ones too, but
Yeah, package art was a pretty popular thing back in the day. I think we have some examples, but people used to doodle on the back of packages. And
here's a modern one with a stamp, but this is sort of what it transitioned to with stamps on packages. But a lot of what we're talking about, whether like KBK did a lot of it, Nub did some of it, Bitch did some of it. It was hand drawing, like pens and Sharpie and
clap
colored
on
pencils.
bags.
Oh yeah, Clash with like his it was all hand done. It was kind of wild the amount of effort put into something that like a lot of the times like the art might even get destroyed by USPS or whoever is transporting it. But that was kind of the fun of it.
Yeah. By the way, you can see on these proto keys, this is like, I guess these are what, like?
They're SP blanks.
SP blanks, yeah. So same thing here. And this is from the gentleman who, was with JQ and others made the synth. So you can see the learnings from these early keys and how they flowed to, right, making tooling to make things better.
Yeah, I've measured way more cherry profile blanks with a pair of calipers than I care to admit.
All right. After Rob, okay, KeyCon. So, first annual KeyCon 2013. What is that now?
It was
11
in
years ago.
UIUC in Chicago. I think someone had it in at the university, so we got to have a meetup there. As you can see, the infamous chip bowl that everybody talks about, or circles back every so often. We had early collectors. So this is a gentleman named Jay Krause. He literally dumped everything in a clack bowl and walked away, and we just got to enjoy it. At the time, that was easily the biggest collection I had ever seen. We also couldn't believe that he just walked away from him. Really great.
I love that.
And you can see Cypho's LZ, if you know that, in the top right.
Okay, so here is where I switch over. Yep.
So yeah, you can see, like, there's my old invoice in the middle, and you can see an old Internet Archive of how cheap plaques used to be.
I entered that sale. I lost that sale, but I entered it.
Yeah. They were not sales like now, where it's like, if you open up Instagram, there's 15 sales a day. They were packed sales, maybe quarterly, maybe, and it would be a big deal. I remember setting up in Skype chat because we didn't have Discord then, and just refreshing DCAG. The owner, IMAV, used to say that clack sales were amazing to stress test the server because you would get like 20,000 people, 2,000 people suddenly interested in being on GeekHack.
Even back then.
It was a lot of people. Maybe it wasn't 20,000, but it was a lot of people. Next slide, please.
Wait, I'll say too quick before we go. With the clack sales on PK,
actually,
it was kind of a weird format compared to today. Because you would go, and each of the caps that would be raffled off had its product page. So you would add it all to your cart, and you would basically check out normally, but you wouldn't actually pay. And then if you got the invoice, that's when you'd actually pay. So you didn't fill out a form for a raffle. It was basically like checking out on a website. But then, yeah, you didn't actually pay until you won.
And just to point out to people who may have gotten into the hobby during the pandemic, we only had that many MX caps. No Hyperglides, no factory ergo clears, none of that. We had those.
You could reasonably name every Frankenstein.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, there were MX.
That's your photo?
Yeah, Nephlock would exist.
Okay, next slide, please. So you can tell even back then we were very early that Mr. Binge is actually outside right now. He has his own table. The KeyCon were pretty similar. We would volunteer to give presentations. We'd give presentations. They could be literally anything. Cypho gave a talk about the greatest Korean keyboard ever, the DT35. And he imported 2 of them so he could do the Cypho board because he and I were humongous StarCraft fans, and so we just had to have one. As you can, do you have the Snorlax tab?
I did the Snorlax one.
Okay, no worries. So you can see in the middle that this is the cap that Binge made me, and it is with Rich. So he was literally making caps at the meetup. You could request him to make anything. He was still experimenting, and he would talk about his process back then. So it's very interesting to hear that talk.
I have this one. I don't know if was this one too? I don't think so, right?
I don't think so.
Okay. I don't know. I forgot the Snorlax.
They were all, I think the caps that were made then were all just like,
The clay, yeah.
with the clay on this weird blank that came out of a crab pad. Okay. So you can see, like, here he is live sculpting, and you can see he even brought molds and stuff here. So even back then, it was like, it was a pretty big, enthusiastic collector scene.
And so you had a good, even from the start, the first KeyCon, there's a lot of artisan representation.
A lot of artisan representation, yep. Next one. So yeah, you can see, thank you, Mr. J. Reggie, the lovely photos that we have collected, just casual, very casual, nothing to see here.
Those leaves hurt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And you can see at the top, the middle here, all the way at the top, you can see how some of the caps are leaning forward. That's because those are buckling spring. Yep.
Is K3 what did K3
K3 was like after Bro, right?
Wasn't it 14?
I think it was 14 or 15.
I think it was 14 or 15.
Yeah.
I think the first postings were around 14. Hoffmike, do you remember? Because you were a mod then, weren't you?
When
When K3 came out.
Because you remember he was posting threads all enthusiastic, thinking everyone would be like, "Oh my God, thank you, we can finally buy these," and then proceeded to just get dumped on by everyone. And then K3 was
14?
faking clacked skulls. Oh yeah, K3 KC was faking clacked skulls and
It's a
replacing
Vietnamese maker. Yeah.
allegedly replacing the logo on the back with everything they made. There's no way to verify that, so take that with a grain of salt. They were already faking caps. But yeah, they when they started posting on Geekhack, they thought everyone would be hyped about it, and then the community immediately backed up Clack and put them in the place they should have been. And they proceeded to get banned several times. They kept remaking accounts. It's why they have different numbers after the end of them. They were really just flying them off, and yeah, it's wild.
The times. Okay.
14.
2014 KeyCon. So we were all excited after the Chicago one, and one of the moderators owned some kind of company out there, so we hosted it at his place. We did not have any Artisan panels there, but we did have other presentations. I did one on metals and metal processing for keyboards, which is oddly still relevant. You can see there's very early people who are talking about like 40s and custom layouts. And then Hata was talking about like custom controllers. We were also lucky enough, Hoff and I were lucky enough to get a field trip to the Pixar campus afterwards, which was awesome.
That's cool.
I also got to tour GitHub when GitHub was independent, which was also awesome. Next slide, please. I think about this all the time, and I don't know what it's about Artisans, but I just wanted to talk about this. This is my first taste of custom or vintage computers. Someone brought a terminal and a matching keyboard so you can play text adventures, and it was a lot of fun. It was just nice. This is also the meetup where the NovaTouch got. The prototype was shown, but then the CM was like, you can't take pictures, you're not allowed to like really talk about it, we just want to hear feedback. So it's kind of not the best. We weren't very happy about it, and of course, the people who aren't at KeyCon are like, where's the NovaTouch? What's going on with the NovaTouch? And we're all just like, yeah, we can't take pictures, I don't know what's happening. So next one, please. So this is when I say my 401k grew strong, this was my board, and you can see some early nubs, some early, it wasn't Hungerwork Studio, it was still binge caps then, early robots, there's some clack blanks, and it's a KMAC LE.
Was that Geekhack thing like a sticker, or is that?
It's a acrylic panel that someone laser cut and then gave it on with VHB tape. They like gave it to me with VHB tape, so I just stuck it on. Nice. And yeah, next one.
Oh, we have a
Sorry?
KMAC to show.
Oh, we do have a KeyCap to show. You're right.
So this is, there's no Artisans on it, funny enough, but
You hold it on.
yeah, this is the KMAC I guess maybe it's semi-famous KMAC Happy. This is the one that Nightcaps had. It was originally Titan Gray and sustained some pretty severe damage. And I guess Marcus thought that it would be really funny to anodize it hot pink. I mean, it looks fantastic. I love it.
He had a thing. He anodized his boards in hot pink. He had an accent like that
and
too.
it really, these old boards too, like it's straight up, it's an aluminum brick. Yeah, it's the plate mounts to the bottom and the top screws down, and it's a pretty simple design.
So just to point it out for people who don't really know how these came to be, or like why these are so significant and why you see OTDs for $20,000. Back then, not a lot of us knew how to read Korean. We didn't know how to get on OTD. We didn't have a hookup to Korea. They didn't know we existed. We didn't really have any contacts there. You would get a trickle of them, and then they would get passed around to various people. I knew one guy who would like squirrel them away in the garage, carb, and then like suddenly he'd just be like, "Oh yeah, I just have a king saver. Here you go. Like here's a KMAC. Here you go. Like here's my OTD collection. I just stack them in like a garage in the back because they take up too much room in the house." And so like you just find these random pockets of these like old metal customs that we all loved, but they were not cranking them out the way they are now. So it was like, if you went to a meetup then, it would be a lot of vintage, a lot of pre-builts, and you'd see a couple of really nice ones. And so you can see like Hoff's old collection here. It's a mixed bag of stuff. You have LZGH and a Kish saver, but you also have like a Pure and a 660C. Those are just pre-builds because that's just what we had. And if it was bring that or bring nothing. So I know Hoff still has the LZGH, which is lovely. His Kish saver's outside. Go type on it. It's the best clicky experience you'll ever have, and you won't want to type on MX clickies. He also brought his collection. I have no idea if you have any of those caps. Probably not.
Oh, some of the caps. Oh, yeah, actually. Oh, did I not bring it? I only brought one lesson. Yeah, I have some of those caps, but I'll see if there's any here.
So, like, if you flip to the camera, so there's this Watson, which is, again, some of the early binge caps. They were supposed to be like a WASD, which is why it's called Watson. So, they came as a set of it, and
It's a little hard to see that.
He's got his hands and like a body and a face.
Exactly. All right. Next slide, please. So this picture is really hard to see, but I think Rich has some of these caps because these are either the first KBK death lifts or very
not the
early
first, but they're early ones.
very early ones.
Okay, depends on how you want to count this, yeah.
Yeah.
I would call them Gen 2s. I would call them Gen 2s, but there's also Gen 1s, and then there was sort of a version before that, but it's hard to say what order you actually cast them in. There's only 5 or 6 of them. They're really cubic looking. Allegedly, they were released, which I don't know. Who knows where they would have ended up at this point. But yeah, Death Lives, if you really want to track like the progression of KBK to KWK or like into it and the progression of Corey's casting skill, I would say look at Death Lives. It went through the most iterations of any of his sculpts. It continued to the full life of KBK. He didn't really continue it into KWK. Although the box set, I kind of feel like in spirit is a little bit of the Death Lives continuation. But yeah, pay attention to Death Lives. They're fun.
Okay, so back in Chicago, because that's where we had the organizer and that's where we had the hookup. If you guys know Keyboardio, they were starting to get their production going. So I know we talk a lot about like Artisans and resin stuff right now, but they were giving a talk on, hey, we're making an ergonomic keyboard. Whatever the offerings are right now, they're not good enough. And we need to go out and source our own caps so we can make our ergonomic keyboard reality. And so we're just going through the process. And my favorite slide is Americans have sausage fingers. So he said it was hard to make caps because if he compared them to like Asian people, people have different hand sizes and it's harder to get different, like, well, how does one set of cap accommodate everyone that potentially could be a customer? So that was just a very interesting talk from a, yes, we were making custom keycaps, but not like the nice resin that we like to see. Next slide, please. Once again, our friend Binge, who's now in the audience, was also at the meetup and brought lots of his caps.
Joe, that guy's right here. UCBS Joe in the back of that shot, and then the Earl that's in that picture. That shot of Binge's board. Both these caps are in there. This is the original Earl Escape, too.
If you were here earlier at the 11 o'clock talk where I think Chad and Miriam were talking about passing a synth back and forth, this man helped design it, and we had a prototype at KeyCon 2015. He keeps saying it's essentially a napkin sketch of the synth.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a cursed napkin sketch in that Binge sketched out roughly what he wanted, and then somebody paid somebody to mill out that version of the sketch, and what you see is the train wreck you see here is the result of that. Like, look at the cruciform, like it's not even close to, I can't get that alive, not even close to the correct shape, like not even close to functional, but it communicated the idea well enough that actually at KeyCon 2015, I had already been introduced to Binge a bit before then, and we had been talking, but then at the meetup was the first time we were able to talk about it more, and he handed me that proto, or napkin drawing, whatever you want to call it, and said, hey, like, I hear you're going to school for engineering, I hear you might, like, you know how to use CAD, you're passionate about keycaps, can we turn this into something functional? And that kicked off
a project I definitely underestimated going into it. I thought I understood like what was possible with keycaps and what a mold was and like how it could be used, but seeing what people have done since then really opened my eyes to what's possible with keycaps and just what's possible at that small scale.
And I think that, I mean, the release of that really changed Artisans because it made it a lot more accessible to people. Right? I think we saw an explosion after that. Back to the presentation.
Yep. So yeah, so this is just some more of what was available. Just, you know, Hoff's collection and some other people. This is my Kitsch Saver, and I regret selling the Enviro BS, but it's okay. I had it at one point.
Was that coated, custom coated? What was?
This is custom powder coated. So the gentleman I was talking to before, named JD Karp, had found a powder coater that had this like sparkly purple automotive powder coating. So I had mine powder coated, and it's one of one. Desk Authority told me that I should be ashamed of myself for customizing my keyboard, and that I should send it back to beige. And I said, when I die, you can get it from my family in my will, and then send it back to whatever color you want.
That's great.
So yeah, that's it.
Thanks. That was a great retrospective of the KeyCon. All right, so back to where we left off here. Talked about KeyCon, and then so we talked a little bit about KBK. I think JQ has one of the best collections of this maker. But here's a few early stuff. Any others that you want to point out, JQ?
I can bring in some mummy ones.
Okay,
we can bring in the rest of the.
Oh yeah, there we go. Here's this full set. It was one of the pictures.
Kind of the MX
get.
version. He never did the MX one, but there's some infill eyes.
It's hard to see. I know. Sorry.
Man, forget.
Yeah.
Our good buddy.
Oh, here's a false idol.
I know we
Black Blob.
I know we blasted through like showing off the Death Lips, but that was the original sale. Like he somehow has 3 of the caps from the original sale that Corey ever did.
So these are some pretty rare KBK.
Something I would point out too, as far as changing how caps were made a little bit or experimenting. So that cap I just put down, the Stay Gold MX Mummy 1, I've had that now since 2016, or early 2016. When I got it, it was bright, shiny gold. Apparently there was brass or bronze, something like some metal in the actual pigment. And now, because I use the cap, and at meetups I let people handle my caps and like see, experience them. The paint has worn down, it's starting to oxidize, it's starting to turn green, it's a lot duller than it used to be. Like, it's a painted cap, like they age. But it's I just like seeing stuff like that where I like the kind of uniqueness he had, and it's less sustainable today because I think people want stuff to match key sets, and if your caps age wildly, they're not going to match key sets. But I think it's more fun.
Yeah, it's organic.
Yeah, it shows like you use your caps, and you're not just holding on to them to flip like sneakers. So I always like to see the tune-up.
After that, we're 2014. Dodgy keycaps. This guy was an interesting maker. Go. You have one from the sale. Nice.
Oh yeah, that is one of the oldest caps he made. That is first sale. This is a later version of the Mister, and then I also have one of the sculpted. I believe those were this later one. I think they might have been CNC'd. I'm forgetting what it's called.
Do we have? Is there much known about this maker? Did he interact much?
He had some. He had a maker thread and posted a decent amount on KeyCap. I haven't read a ton about him. I just know, I remember them coming out at the time, but I don't remember reading his maker threads much. But he definitely had an interesting style. I like how it went from like pretty hand sculpted looking to like it got really geometric later on. And then he also experimented a bit with like a skeleton encapsulated inside a body. Did a bit of posting on Instagram about it, but then never really did anything with the caps and kind of just vanished.
Which is like a lot of the early makers. Yeah. Let's see here. I don't have any
I don't
hammer
have
caps.
any hammer.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have any hammer ones. Gas masks, we saw some. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So that one actually interesting with this one. So now I think that one and this one too. So both of these are. This is this gas mask, despite being the old style respirator, the purple one. So that purple colorway was sold in the same sale as this green one. And so the brand started out being called Gas Mask Keycap, rebranded to Hotkeys Project. And in the first Hotkeys Project sale, where they did the new version of the gas mask, Martin threw in 2 colorways of the old style gas mask. I have no clue how they went out. I know it happened during the sale, but I don't think it was part of the sale form. I haven't gotten any answers on it, but I know they exist because I have one here.
Nice.
Like that's all I can say. But I know it like he
Maybe
mentioned,
like a,
he
maybe a
posted about
bonus?
it. Yeah, he posted about it. Something about like for people requesting the old gas mask come back. I've included some in this sale, but like the specifics of how it worked out, I don't really have.
Gotcha. Cool.
Sometimes I think we go a little too far with all the minutia and trying to figure out where everything is. And sometimes it's just nice. I know. Sometimes it's just nice to be like, I got this old thing and it's fun.
So Crap, I think, is one of the most underrated makers. He's been around for a long time, based in is it Malaysia, I think. Yeah. He's still selling today. Here we have some of his earlier stuff.
So we got some of the dragons are maybe some of the most recognizable, and then I have you may have seen the wings glued on when they did the later version of the dragon like this. They released them with wings that you could glue on yourself, and there were other accessories. So there was like a Frankenstein one that had like bolts that went into the.
It was a short-lived sculpt.
Yeah, it was short-lived, but there were all sorts of these accessories. Like they were really trying to get people to modify keycaps that they owned and personalize them, and I think like. I don't want to say it's the first attempt at that, but it's one of the earlier attempts, I think, at like trying to push the public to be like, hey, like own this, modify it, make it yours. And I think it's fantastic because like there's all sorts of, I have 3 or 4 sets of these wings. They came in at least 2 different styles, all sorts of colorways. Like they were really trying to get people to have some fun.
And then I have some later ones here. This is, I think this is a bit later, right?
The also.
Yeah, well, interesting. This one has been the same color.
I think that came out when the Husky did.
Okay. And then had his a chip key, yeah. And then very famous, and there's I don't know if Shell is here in the room today, but his sheep were really cute cap. And he had multiple variants of this over the years.
There's a big horn, small horn.
Big horn, small horn, yeah. Cool. All right. Katzenkinder. You have one here? Let's see, there's at least a couple.
I think I forgot mine. I only have blanks.
I think these are both Katzenkinder. Let's see.
Oh yeah, we're not reaching out.
There we go.
We're on top of that.
So those are Katzenkinders. You have to drill through. If you go to the website and drill through, you can get to the Geekhack page, and you'll see some of the work he did. Again, not a lot of like multi-shot stuff or anything, right?
I think a lot of anything that's multicolor is simple. What you see here, where either the sculpt is highlighted or the top half of the keycap is one color and the bottom half is another.
Yeah.
I don't know of anything really more complex than that.
Okay. Mandolin keycaps. This is a very interesting maker, a Chihuahua.
Yeah, you want one? So Mandolin made some. I'm a big fan of keycaps that are way too large. I like especially comically large caps, and a lot of Mandolin's caps are gigantic. Like that Chihuahua's ears, it's like a 2.5 unit wide cap. It's spectacular. But he took commissions and lived in Brazil, kind of a weird dude, and took years to deliver keycap. So I ended up abandoning my commission after like, I don't remember how many years it was. It might have been 2.5 years before I pulled the plug on it, which is sad. They're still floating around occasionally. They don't age spectacularly. They weren't exactly the highest quality caps, as you can maybe get from the picture. But yeah, they were fun. They were quirky. But
this reminds me of Gloys, who I think is coming up now. Let's see. Shadow
he was
caps.
Also, Mandolin was the first person to try to do lube Artisans. They did squishy ones and opened up a group buy for it. Never delivered on it.
I don't know if everybody got refunds or not, but that was another multi-year long project that ended up failing.
All right, so KWK rebranded in 2014. We have lots of KWK here. Let's see. And of course, this is the brand he's currently selling under. But you can come up to our table afterwards outside, and you can see a lot of those.
Oh yeah, we can just bring your back. Do you have more?
Oh yeah. Let's see.
Can I see the microphone? I just have a story. So when we rebrand, it's not like there was like a website or anything. He literally
There
just
was.
there?
There was a KWK. So the earliest
Actually,
KWK
this is-
sales were first come, first served sale
think I've got a
posts
lot of KWK.
on a website, and it could happen at any
Was
time, and there
Inspired
might be one
KWK?
after another, or there might be one, and then a few hours later you post another one. It was complete lunacy. It's not like he'd even post warnings beforehand. He would just chuck stuff up on the site, and you get it or you didn't. I managed to get one cap from it. I don't know where it ended up. It was the Crystal Lake wrapped, but it was all hell broke loose on keycap when he would start drawing it up. These people would be theorizing like, is more going to come up? Were there multiples of the cap? Was it a one-off? Like nobody had any clue what was going on. It was so much fun.
It was a big cartel website.
Oh,
Yes,
you're right.
yeah, it
Thank
was.
you. Also, he would do things like he would sell things, and then in the classified post, he would just put, hey, just have something for sale, and buy the cap. And if you were lucky enough to stumble on the classified post, you got the cap. And if you didn't, whatever. He would never advertise it. He would never say he did it. You just got lucky if you did. He had one username that he was using, stopped using it, then just started posting on a different account. Punkstead, exactly. And we were just like, isn't this just the same guy? And then we just kind of figured out that was the rebrand, and yeah, we just rolled with it.
And if you guys, join his sales today, I think he's the only maker that uses email sales.
The email sales were like the whole
pain
method.
is
though.
part of the process.
Exactly.
It's like it's as mean as he can still be and sell caps.
Yeah. Okay, Fendant of Polymer. This was a heavily engaged member. I'll let JQ talk a little bit about this gentleman.
So Fendant, he was kind of a process-oriented maker, I guess, early on. He was really focused on, I guess, a bit on sculpting. He wanted to do the classic, like, I'm just going to do a skull. By the time he started making caps in 2015, it's the slides that were right there. By the time he started making caps, like everybody, there was already the joke that like, if you're going to be a maker, you got to make a skull because everybody does it. So where Murray started out is what you see here on the end, which is it doesn't even have a stem. It's just like a face sculpt kind of beginning. And that turned into that cap right there, which is called Joseph, which is just one skull, I promise. Abbreviated. He made a few of them. I don't think he really liked it much. There was originally a different plan for the cap where there was going to be some additions to it, and it was kind of going to look like more like a skull set in a rock. But he ended up moving away from that and getting really interested in encapsulation, and then that became the dozens and dozens of Murray colorways we all know. And Murray's did go through a few versions. His early Cobra ones were admittedly kind of rough. They haven't aged amazingly. Some of them have aged fine, but the early attempts at encapsulation, people were still learning how to get the layers to adhere to each other properly. And so now over time, you see sort of voids end up appearing on older ones, which, I don't know, if you like old caps, it's kind of cool to see the evolution of like encapsulations made today are likely, I think, going to age better, assuming they're coming from a person who has paid attention to what people have talked about with encapsulation and learned how to do it properly. You can kind of see that, I don't know if it comes through in the camera, but even on the early Tober Murray here, the way it presents is you'll see, like, especially on the skull, you'll see bits of white appear, because as those internal forces relieve themselves, it creates little voids that then show up as white pockets. But then the later ones down the line, you see they're still clear and polished, and they're aging, beautifully.
Those are nice. Metallic ones are cool. All right, moving on. Coming to early 2015, Key Collective. All right.
God, the Skull Squadron picture hurts to see every time. I want that cap.
I asked him if he has that. He
No,
says,
I don't know how many people have asked him
he's
that
screwed the
question,
box.
but
So
He at one point gave me an answer about dumpster diving if I wanted it.
yeah. Oh, he's one of those makers who hates his older work.
Oh
So
yeah, no, yeah. He wants to, yeah.
he wants to have it not
He would
exist.
do terrible things to Diego's collection.
Yeah. So here's some.
Oh yeah. Let's just bring up.
Oh, yeah, there
just
you
bring
go.
up we
There
have
you
the
go.
archive. Let's just
There we
throw it
go.
up here.
So what's cool about Key Collective is you can see he iterated through versions pretty quickly. So the stuff at the top here, Diego's got a full collection of what's called the fruit basket.
We can throw that.
And here's the Chairman Mao. This is a very early one. He hates this cap, by the way.
And that's the smaller one too. There's a larger,
Oh, there's-
earlier version that I want too. That's even funnier. They're great.
He made a lot of these. The FERT V1 and V2. One of my personal favorites, the little gummy bear type caps, the Kiwalas. This was a collaboration with Retro Chick, who I think is coming up. I don't know if we missed her earlier. So he did a lot of encapsulation here. This was a collaboration with Booper from Eclectic. There was multiple versions. And then, of course, the paw keys, which are super popular, and I think the subject of lots of fakes too.
Well,
right?
it's a fun line because it's a cap that's been faked, but then fakes of the fakes have been made.
Yeah.
So it's like the photocopy of a photocopy, where each time it gets simplified. The design gets simplified further, and it's kind of funny to see. I mean, it's a shame that it happened, but it's kind of
Amusing.
It's been funny, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been amusing to watch.
So yeah. I mean, I wish we had this initial sculpt. Yeah, I don't know what he's probably he never give it to us if he had it.
I don't think he cast it. I think, but
Yeah.
yeah, if he had it.
Then a lot of these like early to mid 2015 makers, like a lot of them, I don't, apart from Doom caps, they kind of
I haven't
disappeared.
been able to find any loot keys.
Yeah.
I've looked.
Roast potatoes. You want to talk? This gentleman did like a blog, and he was tracking, right, the
forgot
market
about
for a
the
while.
blog. I don't
Yeah,
know
because
about
when I was building the history for this page, I came across a lot of his older blog posts,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the first person who attempted to make like a site that tracked the market. We had weeklies and stuff.
On the blog
Yeah,
front,
I think it is. Yeah.
I think the Key Collective blog is still up because they had early on the Key Collective, they were posting blog posts for their sales, and like the sale menus with prices are still up. Like that's another gold mine. If
So
you
here's
want research.
this is like a trip through history. So you can see roast potatoes. His old blogs are still up, and he used to have these artisanal roundups. Some old bro
I
caps.
remember that sale. I won that green one.
Yeah. So really interesting trip back through time if you want to take a look at that. Couldn't find any of his caps. Let's go back up. Okay, there we go.
I don't have any reference to
Some more 3D stuff coming out. Retro Chick. You want to talk a little about Retro Chick?
Yeah, so we have some here. People will mostly know Retro Chick from her collabs. So she did Frankenfurt with Kudos, which is based on Frank, a sculpt of hers. So right here, the green, which is kind of, it's
hard
kind
to
of picking
see.
out on camera. But the green is her version of the Frank. And actually both of those caps right there, the green ones, those were sort of a test cap she cast and sent to somebody to test for her. And then the Yeti you see there, it didn't work on a switch.
No, it's for you, it's
So
for
they
you.
dremelled out the bottom of the Yeti for her, mailed it back to her, and then that became the master for the later molds. And then she sent it back to them to keep, and I ended up getting it. So there's still Dremel marks cut into the bottom of it that then made it kind of onto the production caps. So that's kind of a fun like pre-production set. But then this black cap is the black one right there. That's a prototype of the Frankenfurt. So that was when Kudos modified. Frank needed to be made larger in order for a skeleton to fit inside of it. So Kudos sculpted some extra body around Frank, gave it more of a neck, kind of bulked it up a bit, and then sent that cap back to Retro Chick to approve before they went forward with the collab. And then she ended up giving it to me. And then to the next of it, you see the Frankenfurt you'd be familiar with as the Key Collective. And an interesting thing about her too, with the collab sculpts, between Chemo with Tiny,
and Frankenfurt with Key Collective. That makes up like 60% of the retro caps that are out there. As far as I have to take some estimates with the collab sculpts as far as how many exactly were produced, but they really make up the bulk of her work because her other caps, she really only did 2 sales and then did some commissions outside of them, but she wasn't making tons of caps. For the most part, colorways are at most, there might be 3 examples, but it's usually only 1 or 2.
Yeah. So I wasn't paying attention to time. We're a couple minutes past the hour, but we're having fun here. Are there any questions from the audience? You guys have any questions about some of the history while we have these 2 gentlemen up here? No? We'll have all these caps back, I guess, after the sessions, and you can come and check them out in person. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.